Hello and welcome to the video. This video is looking at two of the latest models from HGLRC. Now I've looked at the HGLRC Sector 132 a while ago and was really impressed. That was a 4K quad under 250 grams and was beautiful. So I've got a couple of other models in. This is the Petrol 132. This is a little 3-inch quad, but it's packing a 6S battery. Yep, a 3-inch quad with a 6S battery. And it can do something pretty impressive. This little fella will fly for over 10 minutes on these new batteries. So I'll go through the specs on that and we'll show you how it flies. And the other one is this model here. This is the Hgl Sector V3. There have been a couple of versions of this. This is the latest and greatest. This one has a little GPS on the back, so it's ready for beta flight recovery mode. And it's a pretty bulletproof frame. It's quite a heavy frame, but it flies absolutely fantastically. And it's really perfect for putting something like a GoPro or something on the front and hooting about. So in this video, I'm going to cover both of these. Links below to both of the quads, including the batteries as well. The batteries are from HGLRC. They're called the Kratos or Kratos. I'm not sure how you're going to pronounce that. But there are links below. I just love the fact you can get 10 minutes out of something like this. So let me jump onto the bench. Let me go and show you how these come. Go through the beta flight settings. I'm going to start doing something from this video a little bit different. Going to start making sure that I include the dump and diff files from the beta flight setups on these quads. So if you've got them or you want to compare and have a look at how they're set up, or maybe you accidentally did something where you've blown away the configuration, they are available. Again, links below. So let's start with this little fella first and go on the bench. So while I quickly unbox this, let me go through some of the specs. This is a 132mm wheelbase. It's the Petrol 132 frame kit. There's a FD411 flight controller. We'll connect that into beta flight in a minute and have a look at how it's set up. 13 amp 4-in-1, 3 to 6S capable ESCs at the bottom. The motors are 2400 kV 1106 brushless motors, and the VTX is a little micro VTX capable of up to 400 milliwatts. Camera at the front is a Cadix Turbo EOS V2, and the props that I'm about to get out of here is 3-inch by 2.5-inch props. Weight is just over 77 grams. So it's pretty much ready to go. You have the bag of bits with all of the screws in. You're going to need for your props 2 sets of props, which I love to see because you will occasionally break stuff. Then at the bottom, under the last bit of foam, out of the way, on the last bit of foam, we have a couple of battery straps. We have an adapter cable if you wanted to run 2 3S batteries instead of the battery that I'm going to use in this. I'll show you that a bit close up in a minute. Battery straps provided are big enough to go around the 6S battery, so no problems there. Even with the 6S battery on it, it's well under the 250 grams. The manual, of course, for the receiver, and then quite nicely this which talks about all of the different bits of setup and how to go through and set it up. Again, link below to my Betaflight bind and fly setup video. These things are pretty set up out the box, so there's the absolute minimum amount of buggering about to get them ready to fly. So with that said, let me plug it into Betaflight, show you what that looks like. So here inside Betaflight, nice and easy to get to the USB port on the side of the model. I'll turn it into advanced mode, expert mode, simply move around, that's perfect. Okay, so everything is looking good. Again, I'm going to save everything at the end of this. So the only thing set up in ports is the VTX control, that's all there is. And the configuration looks like this. So motor stop is turned on, unusually for this class. Nice, good D-shot setup. They make a note of the fact that the orientation is changed. 8K loop frequency, so the flight control is working a little bit hard. S bus input. Everything is pretty nicely set up in here. No real surprises at all. I'll potentially turn on the receiver buzzer thing on here so that you can make it make a noise if it comes down in long grass. This is a relatively small model. It isn't cheap, so you definitely don't want to lose it. Now in here by default it's set to drop. I would turn that on to the return to home features. Here's all the PID settings. Again, links and descriptions to the diff and dump command. The bits and pieces on here, I just need to change that around. It was easy to get to the bind button on the receiver. It's just under the top of the model. It has been sent with the RSSI channel set up, which is nice. Modes look like this. So the arming channel, angle and some others. So I'll just move these around so it's going to suit how I have my radio set up. And I'll also set up the beeper too, just to make sure that I've got a chance of finding it when it invariably comes down in anything but really short grass. On-screen display by default looks like that. You'll definitely need to come in here and tweak things around. And the video transmitter, let me just put it on to my default for my goggles, and then that's all set as well. Reasonably up-to-date version of Betaflight, not the latest and greatest, but again, all the settings that I'm looking at in here are saved in a file. But enough of all that, how does it actually fly? Well, this is a cracking little 3-inch frame. The camera isn't very adjustable. That's one of the few criticisms I have of it. You will have the props in the bottom. It's a 2.5mm arm thickness. The standoff height's about 23mm in here. The flight control installation holes are 16 by 16, so it's a 20 by 20mm flight stack. And the camera in here is the 14 by 14 size. So that's, again, the only other thing that I might pick it up on. The camera performance is good. It isn't really excellent, but then we are using a really small camera. Now, hopefully here you can see how nicely it's performing. This is the default tune. I haven't done anything to it here at all. And you can see how much power this thing has got. Hovering very comfortably at about a quarter throttle, and lots of fun to fly. Amazingly, when you fly a toothpick like this, I'm usually keeping a very close eye on the voltage, and that's something that I don't feel that I have to do on this model. I'm comfortably getting over 10 minutes flight times on this 6S 450 mAh pack. In fact, I'm kind of forgetting that it's the toothpick style model at all. It feels very much like a 5-inch quadcopter. And with the performance of the camera, the way it's flying, it inspires a massive amount of confidence. You know, you've got enough power to get in and out of trouble. It can flip and roll if you really want it to. But with that 400 milliwatts power, if it's legal for you to do so on your VTX, if you crank that up, you're definitely going to be able to go out and explore. And that's really what this is a lot of fun for. A little bit more noise from the props, especially when you crank it open. So this by no means is a stealth model, even though it's relatively small. But if you're looking for something that's going to fit under 250 grams, that feels like a 5-inch quad and will give you flight times that more than the 2 or 3 minutes that I'm used to on this toothpick class, then this is absolutely fantastic. I love flying this thing. It is very, very addictive and just flies beautifully. So let me show you how the Sector V3 comes in the box. Again, I do like the way that these things are packaged, but one of the things that I spotted on the side of this is the fact that there's US repair center now, cyclonefpv.com written on the side, which is brilliant. It means that if you do have a problem, if you're in the US in particular, then you don't have to send it all the way back to somewhere like China to get it fixed, which is a massive plus. And that is another one of the nice things that these guys do. I tend to find there's lots of QC stickers over models from HGLRC, and I do actually think that they mean something, rather than some vendors' stuff that I get in here that I think they just stick them on anything that goes out the door. Now this is designed to have no props in the view and a nice big adjustable camera angle. You have lots of spare screws, you have your mount for the GoPro that can go at the front to replace the one that's shipped in it, also the antenna in there that you're going to need. My LEDs came separate, but you can plug those in and install them. I haven't on this. We have a couple of bits of tape that'll be to attach the LEDs. And then we actually have the model itself. It definitely seems to want to come out the wrong way around, but that will work. So here's the model. Let me just go through some more of the specs. Big capacitor in here that's hidden away for a neater look, and lots and lots of TPU parts all over it, including the red bits for protection, but also the black bits around the GPS as well. Now in here is F7 based flight controller. It's a 218mm wheelbase, supports up to 5.5 inch propellers. Inside it's an F722 flight controller, will support 3 to 6S LiPo, 60 amp 4-in-1 ESC in the middle of this. It will pull quite a bit of current when you really open it up. It does support the DJI Air unit, although this one's come with traditional FPV. The 1900 kV motors on here support 6S, or if you get a 4S version, it'll be a 2550 kV set of motors. So plugging it into Betaflight, let's have a quick look at how they've set it up. Again, we'll turn on expert mode. You can see it's looking for the GPS fix, which means all that stuff is set up, which is great. I do like to see the fact there is stuff in the data log, which means that this has been armed and probably flown at the factory before it was shipped. Love to see that. Ports look like this, quite a lot of stuff in here. GPS, a VTX is all set up. Again, I'm going to do a dump and a diff of all this and save it. Links below. Configuration looks like this. D-shots, yeah, pretty standard stuff. This time, although we've got quite high loop frequencies, it's just ticking over. This is an F7 based flight controller, so this is going to have lots of legs for future upgrades to things like Betaflight and iNav. S-Bus receiver, GPS is turned on, so it is ready to go. You can see there at the top on the right hand side it says that the GPS is enabled. No compass sadly, which means you're going to have to do stuff if you wanted to run iNav on it. Power looks like that. By default it's set to drop, however you could have set it to GPS rescue. There's a note in the instruction pages about that. I'd recommend you turn that on. Obviously make sure you have a GPS lock before you start to fly, and do test it. It's not as reliable as some of the other stuff that's out there in my humble opinion. Things like the PID tuning is set like this. Again, if you want to look specifically, dump and diff files are below. Receiver is standard stuff. Modes look like this. I can see already that I have a GPS lock, and that's from the USB connection. On-screen display is going to need a bit of moving around. On here, of course, because it has the GPS, you can have your distance and direction to home, which is very nice if you're exploring and flying in a place that you're not familiar with. And then finally with the version, it's a nice up-to-date version of Betaflight, configured really well. So what's this one like to fly? It again is fantastic. Now the rescue warning sign that's just flashed is because I haven't let it get a GPS lock before I'm out flying, but I know this area pretty well, so I'm not too worried about that. You can see it is hovering. This is a 4S setup. It's hovering only, well, not hovering, but flying around straight and level comfortably at anywhere between 1/4 and 1/3 throttle. So it has absolutely tons of oomph. Now the camera that's supplied on this is working incredibly well and giving an absolutely beautiful image. Slightly better in my opinion than the smaller 3-inch model that I've just been playing with. The only thing with this that I'm picking up is that because it is a relatively heavy quad, it isn't as agile as some of the other quads that I've been flying recently. Particularly coming from the little 3-inch quad that flies like a really lightweight, fun 5-inch quad. Coming down to this, I can definitely feel that additional heft and weight. But that additional heft and weight of having the thicker arms and the extra protection on a frame like this does mean that it's pretty bulletproof, and there's tons of room in here for additional upgrades and changes. You can get into here and put different things in, including things like a DJI Air unit. So with the unpacking, beta flight and flight footage, let me cover my final thoughts on both of these models. So what's my summary and thoughts for this little fella here, this Petrol 132 3-inch toothpick? I love it. This behaves and flies like a nicely set up 5-inch model, and the fact that you can get 10 minutes flight time out of it is just great as well. Again, really impressed with the way this is built and set up, the way it was put together, the choices for all the components. The setup in beta flight is absolutely fantastic. The camera, as I mentioned in the flight footage, is good. You can see the better image in the Sector V3, but this is an absolute hoot. If you are looking for something that's going to give you more than a couple of minutes flight time in this class and stay under 250 grams and hoot about, this has got to be right up there towards the top of that list. So the other quad, of course, is the Sector V3 here. This is the way that I was building quads a couple of years ago, and it's kind of nice to see somebody still making quads like this, because actually there's tons of room in here. So if you want to be able to just mount any parts that you need, because you've got all the choices for mounting, you've got loads of room in here for the different options. You can get the DJI Air unit in it if you really want to do all that stuff. And the fact it's built like a tank and pretty bulletproof, to be honest, then this is really nice. It is really what I would describe as a modern take on that old school type of quad. Separate arms are nice, so if you did snap one, then it's no big deal. The ESCs, it's a 4-in-1 ESC in the middle, so all you need to do is just reattach the motor using the bolts at the bottom and put the new arm in, and away you go. And I do like that. So maybe if you were looking for your first bind and fly quad that was brilliantly set up and that was going to survive your learning experiences, this, if you can afford that kind of money, should be on the list. Or if you're looking for a quad that just works really well, that has enough room for things like your GoPro at the front and has all that additional room, maybe you want to put things like the DJI system in it later on, then that is a pretty good option as well. If you are an experienced pilot, I personally think that this is going to feel a little bit heavy, particularly if you've been using more condensed, lighter frames that may not be quite as crash resistant to this and hasn't got as much room inside as this particular model has. For me, flying it around, it felt very much like the stuff that I was flying 2 years ago, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. For flying and cruising, it's absolutely fantastic. It has tons of power to get in and out of trouble, even with something like a GoPro at the front. I love the fact that it has the GPS on the back. I wish more vehicles were shipped with this setup, so the beta flight recovery stuff for GPS was set up. It'll be nice also for them to start including GPS and compass connections, so that if you wanted to, you could have iNav variants, because something like this with a bigger battery would be fantastic for going exploring. And then if you did get into trouble, you could flick the GPS return to home switch and it would come back to you reliably. Plus with things like iNav, you have the ability to fly autonomous missions and stuff. So maybe we'll see that in the future from people like HGLRC. But as bind and flies go, this is a solid, brilliant performing workhorse. Again, at the higher end of the bind and fly price range, but this is a really sturdy model that performs very well and potentially could give you a platform for quite a few years to come. Thank you for watching my video and watching right to the very end. If you want to find out what I'm currently working on, you can follow me on social media by searching for Painless360 in the usual places. If you'd like to become part of the inner circle, then you can become a Patreon. Details are in the description and you get lots of additional benefits. Check out the playlist section on the channel too. I organise all of my videos into playlists and it's called something like Introduction to or for Beginners. All of the content is aimed so that you can start at the very beginning and it teaches you that subject, starting with simple principles and moving up to teach you everything you need to know.